life transformed when I stopped reading Quit Lit and I picked up personal development literature. And I love You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero. That's how she pronounces it. Sincero. This author, this woman, has taken thousands of years of sage advice and simplified it so that average folk like you and me can actually understand how to make a difference in our life. Something that you should really pick up with this is that we're done giving energy to alcohol. Quit Lit is really fun in the first stages, maybe just to make us feel like, hey, I'm not by myself. I'm not the only F up in the world. But at some point, we're ready to stop talking about alcohol and start moving on with our life. And Jen just does a really awesome job of painting the picture of how to do so. I talk to a lot of people that love Quit Lit because it's very story form. You're getting the story of somebody else and it's inspiring at first. But in my experience, the more I read Quit Lit, the more I was thinking about my troubled past with alcohol and the less I was thinking about how to do different. I felt like I was stuck in that rut and I was looking for any way out. So I said, what do successful people read? What do people who don't give any energy to alcohol spend their time learning about? I'm sure they're not reading the same Naked Mind and Happier Hour that I am. What is it that they're diving into? And I was so excited when I found Jen Sincero. Today, I want to highlight 3 of the most powerful takeaways that I got from this handy dandy book where she was actually explaining things to me that were really intangible and seemed really thick, but actually settled in my mind. The first is actually chapter 1 about the subconscious mind. Her title for the chapter is My Subconscious Mind Made Me Do It. And her first quote is, "You are the victim of the rules you live by." Right off the bat, I want you to look within yourself and ask yourself, what rules, quote unquote, do you live by? What rules do you have that might be totally false and totally unnecessary, but now are ruling your life? Jen does a really fabulous job of defining the role of our subconscious mind and how our subconscious mind will create these beliefs, these rules that have us performing a life that we don't really jive with. I strongly believe that apart from trauma, a big reason people suffer with self-sabotage and even addictive behavior is because they're living a life where they're subconsciously doing things that they don't get excited about. From the text, this is Jen's words, I can pretty much guarantee that every time you tearfully ask yourself the question, what the fuck is my problem? The answer lies in some limiting, lame, and false subconscious belief that you've been dragging around without even realizing it. So she's got some tips at the end of chapter 1. Number 1, remember, our subconscious mind contains the blueprint for our lives. It's running the show. It's literally the director of your life. You might feel like you have control, but if you don't like your results, there's something that's getting you there. Number 2, we are, for the most part, completely oblivious to these subconscious beliefs that run our lives. And number 3, when our conscious minds finally develop and show up for work, no matter how big and smart and highfalutin they grow to be, they're still being controlled by beliefs we're carrying around in our subconscious mind. On that note, on number 3, I want you to think about all the knowledge that you have about things that you should be doing to do better, things that you know would bring you better results, but for some reason, you're not doing them. That's the difference between our conscious thought and our unconscious/subconscious beliefs. I'm skipping ahead here to my, second favorite chapter, and that's chapter 6, titled, Love the One You Is, which sounds kind of funny, but it's just the tone that she writes is really inspiring and entertaining at the same time. The first quote in this chapter is, if we love ourselves, everything in our life works, which I think a lot of us know on a conscious level, but on that subconscious level, again, if we're getting poor results, we probably aren't giving ourselves very much self-love. I'm just gonna pull out one of the most impactful pieces of advice from this chapter, and I guess from the overall book, and that is that when we really want to instill self-love and behavior change, we have to drown ourselves in affirmations. I've talked about auto-suggestion before, which is more of the formal scientific term, but we all love affirmations now, right? And she goes into a really simple way to define them and then also to utilize them. From the text, Jen says, you don't have to say them in the mirror. You don't have to hug yourself or buy a special rainbow journal with a lock on it to write them down. But if you want to turn the ship around, you need to rewire your brain and train it to think differently. And this is what affirmations can and will do for you. So figure out which affirmations you need to hear the most and repeat them all day long in your head, in the car, while you're walking down the street, pretending to be on the phone, under your breath in the line at the DMV. The idea is that we're not just doing them in the morning in the mirror 3 to 4 times. Think about how many times the negative program went into your subconscious mind. That's how much minimum we need to saturate our mind with the opposite. And now skipping ahead quite a bit, make sure you get the book because I'm leaving out a lot of good stuff. Chapter 26 is called Doing versus Spewing. God will not have his work made manifest by cowards. That's a quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson, one of my favorite people to study. But again, Jen does such a great job of simplifying. The idea is that he really philosophized about back in like 1850. Doing versus spewing is all about deciding to make a change and then taking action. I'm just gonna kind of sum up what is here in her amazing, almost final chapter of the book. And that is that most of the time, people will say, I wanna be different, so I read this book. But are they actually out doing the things that the book said? People will often say, well, I took a course, so I know that. But if they're not actually living it, do they really know it? So this chapter really comes down to making a decision, which will flip your brain onto the frequency that you need to be on to attract what you need to make that goal come to fruition, and then actually going and taking action. This is uncomfortable. This is going to be stepping out of our comfort zone. But in the long haul, is it going to be more comfortable to stay where you are or suffer with a little bit of discomfort in the short term in order to reach your goals in the long term? Okay, on that note, no more spewing, just doing. Go get this book. I've got the link in my description. Read this every day, 1 or 2 pages, just to get your mind moving in the right direction. If you've read this book before and you are not living differently, you have not transformed your life, then you didn't read it correctly. Go into this with a positive mind without saying, oh, easy for you to say you haven't lived my life, because guess what? We all have faced adversity, but this book gives you the exact blueprint of how to turn it around. I'm loving our little study sessions, our little magnified book club, and I'm gonna keep them coming because I really do believe that the more we can just input positivity, input progress, and input a focus forward, the quicker we're gonna get over ourselves, the quicker we're gonna get past our self-sabotage. So if you love this little book club session, then make sure that you leave a comment. What was your favorite piece of advice from good old Jen Sincero? And then also make sure you subscribe so that you can get into our next study session when we're diving into more personal development literature.